All Things Conceivable, a surrogacy podcast with Nazca Fontes.
Today we're diving into a topic that touches nearly every breastfeeding or pumping mom at some point: weaning. Whether you're deciding when the right time is to end your breastfeeding or pumping journey, figuring out how to safely reduce your milk supply, or navigating all the emotions that come with it, this episode is for you. We're joined today by Abby Theuring, also known as the Badass Breastfeeder. Abby helps moms and even surrogates navigate the highs and lows of breastfeeding, pumping, lactation suppression, and weaning. She's here to share practical tips, emotional support, and expert advice on everything from gently ending breastfeeding or pumping, suppressing lactation, and caring for yourself during this major transition. We'll also chat about if you're beginning your surrogacy journey and are still breastfeeding, how to decide the best timing to end your breastfeeding journey, and how to prepare to begin your surrogacy journey. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and get ready to learn from Abby how to make this weaning process a little easier, gentler, and even empowering. Abby, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Boy, you're going to offer so much information today, and there's a lot. So let's get right into it. Tell us about yourself and how your badass breastfeeding community began from the beginning.
Sure, I would love to. So I had my first son, Jack, in 2011, and I was full on social worker, got my master's degree, was going to get my license, and that was, I was headed towards a long career in clinical social work. And I got pregnant. I had Jack. I worked up until the day before he was born. And I was like, we'll just get this started here, and then I'll go back to work, and everything will be great. And I was thrown for a very big loop as I became a mom. I struggled with postpartum anxiety, just, the whole identity shift felt very I felt like I was an alien, like in a new world. I had no idea what was going on. All I knew is I wanted to breastfeed. And I'm like, I was absolutely nothing. I knew nobody who had babies. I was 35 years old, kind of later than a lot of people. I was just lost. And so I contacted a lactation consultant, actually. I didn't even know what a lactation consultant was. And she just changed everything for me. She was like, it's okay. People go through this. We'll help you. And she got me going with breastfeeding. I was so excited. It was working out. And I decided I'm not going back to work. I'm just going to stay home with this baby. And I don't know, we'll figure it out as we go. Was feeling very empowered. And I just felt like I was coming into myself as a mom. And I posted a picture of myself breastfeeding at a park, put it in this mom's group on Facebook. And holy moly, that was very dramatic. There were people that were like, oh my God, that's disgusting. Why are you doing that in public? Why aren't you covered? Other people that were like, oh, that's so great. Thanks for sharing. It was just a mixture. I had no idea there was all these politics about breastfeeding. And so in sort of true to my personality, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a Facebook page and I'm just going to bombard everyone with breastfeeding pictures. And so I did that. I started a Facebook page and just started sharing. Everybody was sending photos in. I was posting photos of myself, and it just really blew up. And it just became this place where everyone was so excited to share their photos. And then there were kind of incidents where people were being, harassed in public, or there were nursing. 14 years ago, nursings were a really big thing. And I kind of found myself in this role of an advocate. And I was like, well, this is very familiar. I know how to do this. So I just sort of went from there. I'm not a lactation consultant. I am not trained to help people with their individual breastfeeding problems. I work very closely with lactation consultants, and one in particular on the podcast. So I can help in a lot of ways. Yeah, it's really more of a kind of an advocacy and sharing my own personal experience with breastfeeding and weaning and all of the above.
I'm reaching through the radio waves, with a hand raised about all the ways you describe feeling isolated and anxious and trying to breastfeed and, feeling alone and, following a difficult birth. And no doubt there's many listeners also reaching through, raising their hands, saying, me too, me too, me too. I want to know more. And I love that this just sort of started as this organic Facebook post of just, here I am, this is very raw, this is what's happening in my life, and how it's evolved since then. What can you identify as the most gratifying part of helping other women, learn how to breastfeed and manage lactation?
When I started out breastfeeding, I had so many problems. I mean, now when I look back, I had, one or two problems. But when you're in the middle of it, you're just like, oh my God, this isn't working. And I don't know why I felt so determined to breastfeed or why I felt so upset about the idea of it not working out. Like, it really just upset me. And so to know that there's other people out there, going through that and know for a fact that they feel so good and happy when it works out, that's just the best.
So you are what we call a Milk Donation Challenge champion. And for our listeners that may not be tuned in to what we're doing in regards to milk donation challenges here at Conceivabilities, we are full throttle championing the connection that we have with lactating women and getting them excited to donate their breast milk. So why are you so passionate about educating women about donating their breast milk?
Over the years, I've certainly learned a lot about breast milk and how important and life-saving breast milk is. I do have this connection with all of these lactating people, which is so exciting. And just being able to mobilize this many people to contribute something that just literally saves babies' lives, that's amazing. That's amazing. And I'm so happy that there's nobody more excited about breast milk than the people that make breast milk. They're just like, oh my God, I know, that you make this amazing thing that you can so easily give to other people. I mean, you can just give it, and then people can give it to medically fragile babies, and then they live, and then this family doesn't lose their baby. I mean, I don't know what's better than that.
Well, it's interesting here because you're touching on this thread of sort of, this idea of donating or giving or, life-saving, life-giving initiatives. And, a lot of our surrogates are milk donors and vice versa. So a lot of our Milk Donation Challenge donors end up exploring how to become a surrogate. Do you have any opinions or thoughts on why these two giving journeys are so intertwined?
Well, I think that just in and of itself, they are related. You're giving life through birth and you're giving life through breast milk. I mean, this is how life starts for all of us. And I think that if you are really passionate about one, you're going to naturally be drawn to the other, I think. I mean, I remember thinking about how amazing that would be, to be able to carry a baby for somebody who couldn't carry a baby. And you notice that most lactation professionals, if not all of them, are people that became that after breastfeeding themselves. Mm-hmm. So it's something that you get involved in because you have personal experience with it and you just have this special passion for it.
Yeah. They're really tuned into a life-giving force in their body.
Right. And it makes absolute total sense in my mind why the two are related.
So Abby, let's get on topic for the concept of weaning, decision making, timing. So many moms struggle with this question: when to stop breastfeeding? How can a mom know when it's the right time for her and her child to begin the weaning process?
Yeah, that is a really, really big question. And it's funny how much weaning is so much a part of breastfeeding. It first of all, it takes time and everybody stops for different reasons. I just was talking with a mom the other day who is having to wean for medical problems that she's having. Some people are just completely overwhelmed and feeling it's like I'm ready to move on. Some people have, maybe a surrogacy situation, or just people have so many different reasons. And I think that the most important thing when it comes to weaning is that the people making the decision are you and your baby and nobody else. No pressure, no judging, any of that. It's just when you decide that you're ready and that it's time, and that's the only reason you need.
And I think that's really sound advice because, some people, some women who they're ready, they're just ready, right? And perhaps there's very little guilt associated with it. Some, are compelled to wean because, as you noted, they may have a medical reason or some type of work or other external constraint on them. And, sometimes if women aren't ready, or maybe even if they are, there can be this associated feeling of guilt, right? And so how do you help them address and sort through that decision without the guilt?
I want to hold up like a public service announcement about this when it comes to weaning, is that there is a lot of guilt around it. If you don't feel guilty, you might feel guilty about that, which is just another thing of parenthood, which is ridiculous. But there is also a thing called post-weaning depression, and it's very similar to postpartum depression. When you are weaning, your body goes through many hormonal changes. People can be very thrown off by this. Like, what's going on? Why am I suddenly feeling so anxious, irritable? All the things that come with, these major hormonal changes. But so to be aware and to know that that's something that can come up is very important. The best way to, I think, combat that is just to, listen to podcasts like this and, kind of get involved with the community and, just talk to other people who are going through the same thing. If you're ready and you decide that you are ready, then getting help with that is important.
Well, I was going to ask next about strategies, right? Some gentle strategies for beginning the weaning process that can support the mom and the child, but also maybe we can add into that what would be some strategies to help mitigate this, post-breastfeeding, post-weaning depression, which is maybe quite a new concept for many listeners.
The most important thing with weaning is to do it gradually. Sometimes you hear people, they'll just one day say, oh, well, Milky's all gone or whatever. And I've even heard people they'll put Band-Aids over their nipples and be like, oh, they're broken, all done. And, while that's certainly a concept that maybe a toddler, so if you're breastfeeding a toddler or something and they can understand like, oh, well, it's not there anymore. For your body to just suddenly stop is where the hormonal changes are going to be most dramatic. And on top of that, you have this milk supply. And if we're not removing the milk from our breast, we are at risk for engorgement, plug ducts, mastitis, and things like that can be very painful and annoying to have to deal with. So another thing with weaning is it really is important to take into consideration how old the baby is, baby toddler. The younger the baby, especially if you are weaning a baby that is under the age of 1 year old, you do need to look into either donor milk or formula, because your baby needs a very specific makeup of nutrients at that time. So you need to have, a backup plan for that if your baby is under a year. Over a year is so much easier because they can transition to, solids or maybe some other kind of milk, whether it's cow's milk or any kind of nut milk or water. At this time they can have water. And solid foods, and so that makes it a lot easier. But I think the age of your baby is a big thing to consider. Also, the younger the baby, usually the more milk supply you have. So you're going to have to go slowly and help suppress that lactation, that milk slowly, so that you're, again, not becoming engorged or really just kind of stunning your body.
Let's talk a little bit about safely reducing this milk supply. We've touched upon it, but do you have any like real tactical tips?
If you're pumping at work, you're going to want to kind of just start to cut back very slowly. Let's say you take 2 pumping breaks a day and you pump for 20 minutes each. What you're going to do is you're going to start to limit, maybe pump just for 15 minutes instead of 20 for a few days. And then after a few days, you can cut it down to 10. And you're going to want to pay attention to how kind of engorged you come throughout the day. The kind of science behind the breast milk is the more milk that your baby or a pump or anything is removing from your body is giving your body the signal to make more milk. This is why we can breastfeed twins and triplets, because the amount of milk that is being taken out of your breast, your body's just like, okay, no problem, I can make more. So you want to give your body the idea that you need less, but not so little that you become engorged. So you might pump for, say you cut down now to just 10 minutes. By the end of the day or whatever, you're feeling a little bit engorged. So what you can then do is just hand express, and you can just go on Google and look up how to hand express. It's very simple. You're just going to use your hand and compress your breast in a certain way, and you will express just enough so that you feel comfortable. If we've had milk in our breasts, we all know when there's too much. You know, when it feels like, oh God, I'm getting a little full. So you want to just express just enough so that you are comfortable and you can tell that you're not engorged anymore. But you don't want to go beyond that, because again, you don't want to give your body the idea that it should be making more milk. So you're going to just do that until you get down to, I don't know, pumping 5 or 10 minutes. Remove one of the pumping sessions. So then you can just maybe pump once halfway through the day. And then if you're exclusively breastfeeding, and you're just going to kind of go back from there. So if we have a 10-month-old, some people by this time have a nice freezer stash or something, so they might be able to continue with that. You might want to be looking into donor milk. I mean, as we know, breastfeeding parents are very giving. Or formula is certainly an alternative for the baby that's under a year. And then you're going to just kind of you're going to just step back, and you'll do the same if you're exclusively breastfeeding, or during those breastfeeding sessions after work, you'll cut them back. So if you're nursing for, 15 minutes, then you will cut that nursing session a little short, and then, maybe provide a little bit in a bottle or a cup or something.
And I'm also hearing that, the clock is actually your friend in this process.
Yeah. We talk so much about the early days of breastfeeding and getting started with breastfeeding. We're like, don't watch the clock, breastfeed on demand. That's the best thing to build up your supply. Don't watch the clock. And then, if you add in pumping, you start looking at the clock a little bit more, because you need to stay on top of it if you're pumping. And certainly, yes, through weaning, you're going to be needing to pay attention.
What about, how their bodies and the physical changes that come along with weaning, other than the obvious of, the things to watch out for with engorgement, mastitis, et cetera? Those are kind of the obvious, but what other physical changes occur that maybe women aren't prepared for or need to acknowledge and address?
The engorgement and stuff is the most important part. You might notice that as your breasts become less, your milk supply goes down, you might feel or find that your breasts are sagging maybe a little or a little uneven. You might experience that, and that's a part of life, right? We don't always like it, but it's okay, and it's totally normal.
Yep. Right. And so maybe this is a good transition to the role that community and external support play in this transition? You know, going back 20 plus years ago, we didn't have all this information at our fingertips, social media, videos. I mean, lots of online communities that women, if they were isolated physically within a community, didn't have one physically, that they could find one now online. So tell me what role community and support play in making the transition through some of these, you know, maybe more thorny experiences, physical and emotional.
The internet is really kind of, it's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, it's offered us a way to connect in a time where we have little connection. But it's also a breeding ground for terrible, sometimes harmful breastfeeding information. You might go online and look up, you know, best ways to wean my baby. And they'll say, oh, you should, you know, bind your breasts. That's a big one that you see. Wear extremely tight bra, or bind your breasts to kind of get the milk to stop being produced. And that is an absolute horrible thing to do. That will certainly cause mastitis and infection, and mastitis is no joke. I mean, it is full on like flu-like symptoms, fever. You absolutely have to get medical attention for it, antibiotics. And this is the last thing you need right now. And so you have to be really careful with the information that you're getting kind of randomly on the internet. Moms groups on Facebook are a place where I have found some of my best friends still to this day, and a place where I have seen some of the most atrocious breastfeeding information being passed on to each other. I will say, if you at any point in your breastfeeding journey, whether you're starting out, whether you're weaning, whether you're, you know, pumping and want to stop pumping, you are at any point and you see some information and you say, I don't know about that, contact a lactation consultant. Like, literally just email me, thebadassbreastfeeder@gmail.com. And I work very closely with a lactation consultant, and we can help people just verify the information. It's really important to make sure that you're getting good information.
There are women who actually completely bypass the choice to breastfeed or pump. And if they're surrogates, they choose, you know, not to pump and provide breast milk for their intended parents. So, you know, right out of the gate, they make some different choices about their milk supply. And so for those women, what advice do you have who are looking to safely suppress lactation after delivery? So this is a little bit of a different beast, right? This is not a weaning topic. This is more like, I'm choosing not to produce milk. And
right. This is another area that's really important to know, is that formula is an option. If you choose formula, that is absolutely your choice. So what you're going to do is you're going to do very similar to what we talked about earlier, is you're going to not pump, not breastfeed, and you will, you can, you know, hand express some breast milk if you're becoming uncomfortable, just enough to relieve that pressure, and not give your body the signal that it needs to make milk. You're going to give it the opposite signal of removing very little, is just enough to keep you comfortable, to give your body the message that it is not needed, and so that your body will stop making it. And I think this is another point. Most people give birth in a hospital, and there's a lactation consultant in the hospital. So it's actually going to work to your advantage if this is the way that you're going. There are lactation consultants in hospitals that can help you through this.
Which, you know, I guess makes a lot of sense when you think about it as, you know, holistically. I like to call that period after delivery, right, the fourth trimester.
Yes.
You know, this is, you know, a relatively new concept. And, you know, we really put a lot of emphasis and attention and focus on our surrogate community during this period, because we believe that it just, further promotes their, positive experience as a surrogate in order to sort of heal and recover during that fourth trimester. And whether they choose to pump for their intended parents, whether they choose to pump and donate to a milk bank, or whether they choose to suppress lactation, getting the proper care and support during that period of time is paramount to a positive journey as a whole. So let's turn it a little bit to surrogacy. And one of the reasons we're talking to you today is because we have so many women who are engaged with our program, who are going to embark on a surrogacy journey. They're still breastfeeding, or they're still pumping, and we are supporting them through this final stage of that personal journey of lactation, and we are going to be shoulder to shoulder with them for as long as that journey takes to unfold, until they're ready to begin the process of getting matched and moving on with their surrogacy journey in earnest. So for those who are still breastfeeding, it's important to know that women, I guess I'm going to speak to the audience first who are curious about this. If you're still breastfeeding or lactating, you'll need to stop lactating before taking those next steps in a journey. So while women can apply to be a surrogate while they're still breastfeeding, eventually they will need to end that journey or their pumping journey. Medically speaking, this is because lactation raises the prolactin and oxytocin while lowering estrogen and progesterone, which can disrupt a cycle, which prevents the uterine lining from reacting, and all the things that are important for an embryo implantation to be successful. So we just want to kind of lay that groundwork. So, coming from you as the breastfeeding badass expert, what tips do you want to give them, specifically knowing that, hey, you're going to move on to a surrogacy journey. You're still lactating. I hear that you want to eventually wean. Are there any differences between the women that we talked about previously who are just going to wean for the sake of weaning for a variety of reasons, not related to surrogacy, as opposed to a woman who is going to embark on a surrogacy journey? Any guidance to end breastfeeding for those women?
It's the exact same thing. I mean, your body is the same as everybody else. Whatever your reason is your personal reason, and your body is going to go through the same changes when you're weaning as anybody else for whatever reason they decide. I think that it's super exciting to be embarking on a surrogacy journey, and maybe that excitement will help you through a time that is maybe, I don't know, sad, or I mean, you can still be sad about ending breastfeeding, even if you're moving on to something exciting. For some people, it goes very easily. Some people might have a little bit more trouble. They might find themselves engorged more often. They might find that it takes a little bit more to suppress that lactation.
All this wonderful community building that you've done, and hearing all of these stories for the last, what did you say, 2011 you started this organization?
Oh, 2012, but yeah.
2012, hearing the stories from women in your community. If you had to pick one overarching message to women in the breastfeeding or pumping community, what would it be?
See a lactation consultant. And I know that sounds really boring and not a fun tip, but I cannot express enough how important it is to, we would absolutely never just decide to go through pregnancy on our own, just Googling information.
Yeah.
We would never go through the birthing process without, a professional or somebody helping us through. But so many times we just decide that we're just going to deal with breastfeeding on our own. Mm-hmm. And I can't caution people against doing that enough. Sometimes lactation consultations are not covered by insurance, but I know that the lactation consultant that I work with, she even does online things. It's $90. And I realize that's not, something that everybody wants to throw around, but we buy $300 cribs and $600 strollers. And I just really want people to look at a lactation consultation. Whether you are getting started, whether you have just had your baby and you decide that you don't want to breastfeed and you just want help through those first initial days and your milk coming in and how to deal with that, or whether you are weaning a toddler. A lot of people think you don't reach out to a lactation consultant when you're weaning because you're ending breastfeeding and they're supposed to help you with breastfeeding. That is not true. This is all part of the breastfeeding process. And it's really important to, have somebody that you're consulting with that is a professional in that area. That's my big takeaway.
I could not applaud that more. I really believe that, there's a sentiment that I know my body and my baby best. And yes, you do. Absolutely true. But there's everything to gain in all aspects of life when you consult with a trained professional, because you're going to get some type of information, insight, nugget, advice, data, science. You're going to get something that you didn't know before or anticipate, and you're going to understand even more about your body and your baby. So thank you for that, because medical advice and training exist for a reason. It can be helpful. And I thank you for sharing that advice with people out there who are, lactating at any stage of the journey. So I hope our listeners take that to heart and follow that sound advice. And Abby, you have just been a wonderful source of information today. I couldn't thank you enough for joining me and sharing all of your wisdom. And for our listeners out there, please be sure to join her community if you're lactating, and find some great information and advice at the Badass Breastfeeding community. Abby, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a joy.
Well, that was very informational and insightful, and I think that I'm going to forego an introspective aha moment and really just give you a hard-hitting roadmap on next steps, regardless of where you might be in your lactation journey, particularly for women who are wanting to become gestational carriers and they're still lactating or breastfeeding or pumping. Knowing that we can work with you to customize the timeline that works best in your life is something really important to convey. So when you start your weaning journey, that can be started when you know the time is right for you. Definitely consult with a lactation consultant. Get some tips and insight into how to do this best for you and your baby. Know that the clock is your friend. I think that was really kind of a very insightful piece of information to gather, and one that I had heard just for the first time today. So know that the clock is your friend when you're trying to wean. Unfortunately, ladies, guilt might be part and parcel of the process, and that acceptance is just one more piece of the journey of the lactating process that you're going through. And so just remember, if you're looking to be a surrogate, you're currently breastfeeding or lactating, know that we will customize the process so that we make sure that we are working hand in hand with you for the right time to pursue surrogacy in your life. Thank you so much, listeners, and until next time, take good care.
Thanks for listening. At Conceivabilities, we believe everyone who dreams of becoming a parent deserves that chance. And it's strong, compassionate women who make it possible. With 30 years of experience building families, Conceivabilities has seen firsthand the incredible impact surrogates make. Women, like our surrogates, are a powerful force for change, uplifting families, strengthening communities, and proving that when women empower women, anything is possible. Becoming a surrogate is more than a journey. It's a chance to make a lasting impact. Learn more about surrogacy at conceivabilities.com, because when the match is right, dreams come true.